In the 1970s, thousands of young backpackers traveled across Asia in search of adventure. They carried little more than a backpack, a passport, and the excitement of discovering a world far from home. It was an era before smartphones, GPS, or social media. Families often waited weeks for a single letter, and travelers frequently changed their plans without telling anyone. It was the perfect time to disappear. As more tourists arrived in countries like Thailand, Nepal, and India, reports of missing travelers slowly began to surface. At first, no one saw a pattern. A backpacker missing for a few weeks wasn't unusual. People often stayed longer than expected or changed destinations without warning. But then the bodies started to appear. Some were found on beaches, others were discovered along remote roads. Many were initially believed to have died from accidents or illness. It wasn't until investigators looked more closely that they realized something far more disturbing was unfolding. Behind many of these cases was one man. His name was Charles Sobraj. Born in 1944, Charles was intelligent, calm, and remarkably persuasive. He spoke several languages and could easily adapt to different cultures. To strangers, he appeared educated, successful, and trustworthy. He often claimed to be a gem dealer traveling through Asia, a story convincing enough to earn the confidence of backpackers far from home. Charles had a simple but effective method. He would befriend travelers, offering help when they needed it most. If someone became sick, he provided medicine. If they needed a place to stay, he welcomed them into his apartment. If they were short of money, he promised to help. What his victims didn't realize was that investigators later concluded many had been deliberately poisoned with drugs that left them weak, confused, and unable to protect themselves. Once they trusted him, Charles gained access to their passports, money, and personal belongings. Those stolen passports allowed him to assume new identities and move freely across international borders, making him incredibly difficult to track in an era long before digital records. As the number of suspicious deaths increased, authorities struggled to connect the cases. Each investigation was handled separately, often by different countries with limited communication between them. Everything changed when Dutch diplomat Herman Knippenberg began investigating the disappearance of two Dutch backpackers in Bangkok. Unlike many others, Knippenberg believed the victims weren't isolated cases. He spent months comparing police reports, interviewing witnesses, and tracing the final movements of missing tourists. Again and again, one name appeared: Charles Sobraj. The evidence suggested a disturbing pattern stretching across multiple countries. Investigators believed Charles had built an international network of deception, using stolen identities and constant travel to stay ahead of law enforcement. Eventually, his luck began to run out. In 1976, Charles was arrested in India after a group of French tourists became seriously ill from suspected poisoning. Authorities linked him to the incident, and he was sentenced to prison. Many believed the nightmare was finally over, but Charles wasn't finished. In 1986, after serving years behind bars, he staged one of the most daring prison escapes in modern criminal history. Reports indicate he gained the trust of prison staff, organized a birthday celebration, and allegedly drugged several guards before walking out of the prison. The escape triggered an international manhunt. Weeks later, he was captured once again and returned to prison, where he remained for years. Decades later, Charles Sobraj was released from prison in Nepal on health and legal grounds after serving many years for crimes there. His story continues to fascinate investigators, historians, and true crime audiences around the world. Known as the Serpent for his ability to deceive, manipulate, and evade capture, Charles Sobraj became one of the most notorious criminals associated with the hippie trail era. His case serves as a reminder that danger doesn't always appear threatening. Sometimes it arrives with a smile, and sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the one everyone trusts.